The very bottom selection, monkey. Okay, I'll go with what the black Joker, actually. I'll go with that. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me go back to here and fully ask for all of the hints, just to see if I can't figure out more. Of course, thinking about it, there's only one way for two cards to be in play. People who claim to have ripped up a tiger card should be suspicious. Specifically, it's worth noting who claimed to take the same card as someone else. Yeah, so we've got tiger and horse, snake and sheep, and rooster and monkey. The two people being involved. Why does that sound familiar? Two people being involved. Why does that sound familiar indeed? I don't really know. Give me another hint. There were two oh yeah, right. There were two burner phones that controlled the Zodiac race, weren't there? And does that mean a pair of people were behind that? Oh. Now we're looking for the accomplice. I see. Rooster and monkey. That seems like a strange pair. There's already evidence to suggest Brian wasn't a true mastermind behind all that. But wait, it shouldn't be possible for someone in our group to be behind the Jade Emperor, right? Nor should it be possible for someone in our group to be the cats. Now, why do I think that? Again, just keep the hints coming. The Jade Emperor talked to us. The cat talked to us. So it has to be a third party in both cases, right? Well, no, not necessarily. We know that a lot of the recordings were pre-recorded. However, were some of them not pre-recorded? Yes. One in specific one I can actually think of right now is the Jade Emperor talking to Dog, which makes it pretty clear that the Jade Emperor was not inside the cafeteria. Now for the cat, I don't necessarily, well, it might have been the case, actually, that the Jade Emperor, with which I mean Brian Morris, was still alive at the start of the game. And after that initial conversation where Dog piped up about Ollie and stuff, he was killed and replaced by one of the other two. At which point, the only other conversation I have that I remember right now is with Mouse at the end of the game, and that could have totally been someone else because Mouse was very much alone in her room. So that could have been one of us. Hold on, there's something weird in my memories. That person. It's the opposite, but it's them at the same time, right? So then, what do you mean? No, hold on. If that's the case, how do you explain their partner's involvement? In fact, there's a lot strange. There are some pretty distinct differences between this game and the last. Brian the mastermind and their partner. It's as though there are three motivations disguised as one intent. So then what's the partner's connection in all of this? I think I'm lost. Three motivation, what's the partner's motivation? It has to tie back into the thing that started it all. That is the murder of Amadeus Bowen. With everyone's testimonies and the state of the windows, I think it's true that nobody but Aaron walked into Amadeus' office that day. So then what if Amadeus wasn't killed in his office? Yep. Consider more. If Amadeus wasn't killed in his office, then how on earth did his body end up there? Of course, Snake's statue. It was described as hollow, right? Given the right setup, it's possible that it was used to transport the body. So then the killer had to be someone who entered the room after the body was moved to set up the scene. That means... Okay, I think I'm back to it. Let me try it once more. I'm still sticking with it being sheep. Well, actually, no. It doesn't explain, because the game is telling me monkey, or not the game, the walkthrough is telling me monkey was the murderer. That just doesn't... That doesn't tie in with anything else, really. Monkey wasn't even there on the day. Monkey had nothing to do with Snake's statue. The only one who could have hidden the dead body inside of Snake's statue, well, there's two people. There's Snake and there's Sheep. Those are the only two that are really suspicious. I don't know why what has Monkey got to do with anything? I found the person with motive. I found the partner, and it's true the partner matches with my suspect. But if the true culprit is really that person, How'd they do it? The evidence points towards Pig's murder happening right when my suspect has an alibi. No, I shouldn't doubt myself. What makes me think the murder happened then? It's that damn scream that's throwing a wrench into the works. But wait, who says the scream was live? Pig's body was by a computer. If the culprit is who I think they are, then they should have easily been able to exit out of that program. It would have been simple for them to have the computer play a scream recording after a certain amount of time. So then what about all the other evidence that points to the killer being inside the room when the scream happened? Is any of that concrete? No, there's nothing saying the killer was in the room when we heard the scream. In fact, that's evidence to the contrary. So then, there's nothing to do but to move forwards and point out who's behind everything, who the true villain is, as painful as that confrontation might be. Warning, beyond this point, the hints will begin to give actual answers. Proceed at your own risk. Okay, let's try it once more. Let's put that save point here. I'm still very confused though. Because again, if the walkthrough is to be believed, then the murderer has to be Monkey. Which would mean I'm actually going to go through this the same way Mouse suggests to go through it, which is assuming that is true and then going through all of the other things that automatically would make true. If Monkey is the murderer, that would mean Rooster has to be in on it as well. How would those two have moved? How would those two have killed Amadeus Bowen? How would those two have moved the statue? None of them touched the statue. Just doesn't make sense. Snake Sheep makes so much more sense. You know what? I'm gonna choose Monkey and I'm gonna see what Mouse has to say. Maybe that will help me figure out the rest. Let me finish. The room stayed silent. You want to know the reason why this person killed those two? It's simple. Let me look at the walkthrough. Top selection. Because they're the mastermind. That's right, they're the person behind this very game, the Zodiac bid. They're the cat. And you know what else? Top selection. Yeah. They also masterminded the Zodiac race. They were also the true culprit behind the Zodiac race. I realize that's a weighty claim, but to understand everything you also need to understand where this all started. You need to understand the truth of Amadeus Bowen's murder. There's something that we've been missing about it. Somebody we've been missing. Top selection. Aaron Morris didn't kill Amadeus Bowen. No, the culprit is one Mr. X. I suppose the question then is, who is Mr. X? Well, I'll tell you. Bottom selection, somebody else. It was somebody not with us at the moment, but someone we all know quite well. Now, I'll explain how that all fits together. Come on, Mouse. Are you thinking clearly? You just leveled a lot of accusations, and most of them don't make a lot of sense. I agree, so I'm curious to find out why they make sense. Are you feeling okay? I'm feeling just fine, Monkey. The question is, are you feeling okay? It must be unnerving, the truth being so close to exposed at this point. Mouse, please, I beg you to calm down. Do your breathing exercises. Enough with the goddamn breathing exercises. How can you talk so calmly to me, you murderer? Murderer? Monkey began nervously tapping her fingers. Mouse, please, I'm begging you, listen to me. What would your father say? Do you really think he'd think you were correct? I'm just trying to save you from the shame of being wrong. I'm right, I am. I have evidence. Do you really? Or do you have theories? Your father had evidence. He was correct. But emulating him and being wrong, that'll just bring you shame. I'm not going to. I'm right, damn it, I am. I said this, but for some reason my energy was being sapped. Monkey said all this with such conviction that I started to waver. Were my theories really any good? Mouse, you're not your father. You're not correct. You're going to feel shame if you continue. My faith had begun to dwindle. With everyone's eyes on me, was I about to be a fool? Was I wrong? Monkey, would you please at least allow Mouse to make your accusations first? Fox, Mouse, I can't say I know you too well. However, in the short time I've known you, you've shown yourself to be quite bright. If you're convinced that Monkey is the culprit, then make your reasoning known. Frankly, nothing Monkey has said should have swayed that conviction. It was barely a coherent point. Yeah, you're right, Ox. So can it, Monkey? If you're innocent, you should let me speak. So this is how it shall be. Interesting. Very well then, I'll listen to what you have to say. But Mouse, you're accusing me of something quite heinous. To be so cruel to a friend. Surely your logic is airtight, right? If it isn't, I'll be sure to point it out. Monkey. I'm sorry, I'm still interrupting you. Please be heard. Okay, I will. Good, it's good to be heard. So then, I'll listen to what you have to say. Like you already suggested, let's start at the top. You claim that somebody other than Aaron Morris murdered Amadeus Bowen. Somebody not in this room. So tell us, who is this mysterious murderer? Okay then, let's begin. Well, it has to be Rooster then. That seems pretty obvious. Amadeus Bowen's murderer and your co-conspirator is none other than Rooster. Rooster? Mouse, are you sure about this? Come on, let's not be absurd about all this. Rooster, Mouse, I'm serious. Are you okay? Quit it with the gaslighting stick. I'm not falling for it. I'm not gaslighting you at all. Just concerned that you're making such questionable theories. You sound like how Brian did. But I said I'd hear you out, so I will. Though I have to wonder how you'll go about proving that an absolute buffoon like Rooster somehow managed to commit the crime of the decade while avoiding detection. So go on. Actually not too complicated when you think about it. First off, let's give Rooster credit. He's a lot smarter than he comes across. He's a hell of an actor. He had been stalking Bowen for a while, vaguely aware of what he had been doing. And on the day he got an appointment with the man, he figured it was the perfect opportunity. The night before, he swiped Bowen's MasterCard in the bar's restroom. What's this? How do you intend to make such a claim? Surely Rooster couldn't pull off something like that. Monkey's right, Mouse. How could he take the wallet, pull out the MasterCard and put it back in Bowen's pocket in the restroom? He never had to do all of that. He simply swapped Bowen's wallet with one of his own. A wallet of his own? Like I said, a lot of preparation went into this. This wallet of Rooster's will become relevant later, but for now let's just leave it as this was how Rooster got his hands on the MasterCard. The following day he used his MasterCard before climbing up the stairs to enter the security room and mess things up. Then he went upstairs and was directed to the right waiting room. There another appointment for Bowen was waiting. However, he needed to get away. So he feigned illness to get to the restroom right before Sheep would go down to the first floor to get breakfast as usual. In the bathroom, Rooster finally put the first of his many devious tricks into play. The wallet he swapped with Bowen had a speaker installed in it. Through that speaker, he intimidated Bowen, talking about how he had proof of Bowen's blackmailing schemes. This was likely a bluff. Rooster probably only had generic suspicions about Bowen's actions brought on by how Bowen was blackmailing his parents. However, Rooster was a good enough actor to convince Amadeus Bowen that he was in trouble. Rooster ordered Bowen to do something in his office first, then to open his office window and make his way to the storage room by climbing on the windows. Okay. I thought that was impossible. Now, hold on just a moment, Mouse. Surely you're aware of how absurd this all sounds. How could you possibly know this much? I don't. A lot of this is guesswork. The details of various places could be completely wrong. I'm just weaving a narrative. I'm not vouching for it to be 100% authentic. Even still, Mouse, you're not making sense. Amadeus Bowen isn't a man who would climb across windowsills just because a random voice told him to. There's creativity and then there's absurdity. That's... No, Monkey. What do you have against creativity? How boring would theories be if they weren't creative? Snake? Apologize for stealing your spotlight, Mouse. Just thought I'd chime in. To Monkey's point, I imagine Bowen wasn't in the habit of such things, hopping across windowsills. However, if he felt like his entire livelihood was being threatened, some minor physical exertion is fairly meaningless. More importantly, it wasn't a 300-foot drop, it was a second-story building. Bowen was a man still in shape. Something like this was nothing. Right, Snake's exactly right. So then Rooster went to meet Bowen in the storage closet. Snake, you're still signing off on this. You were on watch, right? Surely you would have seen Rooster through the window. Not at all. The thing is, door windows have a fatal flaw. If you straddle the wall the door is attached to, then duck under the window, you can evade the line of sight rather easily. Oh? Thinking about it, yes, Mouse is correct. Oh. That's something I misunderstood about the door windows. I didn't think they were like a small window somewhere on the door. I thought the door was completely see-through. Well, I'm not gonna say I would have figured it out anyways, but okay, I definitely wouldn't have arrived at this conclusion because I didn't think that's how the door was. If Rooster moved like that, he quite easily could have gotten around my sight. Seriously? Fine. So then, what next? Okay, but that then pretty much eliminates all my contradictions I had with him having to have been killed in his office or outside of the whole building in the first place. Rooster confronted Bowen in that dark closet. There he intimidated Bowen into doing two key things. Afterwards, Rooster had no use of him. It was time for Rooster to move on with the murder part of his plot. He took out a metal wire he had brought, wrapped it around Bowen's throat and began to strangle him. However, this is when something happened that Rooster couldn't expect. Bowen took out the golden knife he always kept on him and tried to fight back. I can't imagine this was particularly effective, but Bowen was probably able to nick Rooster, getting blood on the knife. But then Bowen finally passed out, having been choked out well enough. Time for Rooster to begin the cover-up. He locked the storage room window. He confiscated the knife with the damning bit of DNA evidence on it. He swapped his own phony wallet back with Bowen's original wallet. And most importantly, he dragged Bowen's body and stuffed it under Snake's large hollow statue. You're not suggesting? Indeed I am. After putting the body there, Rooster put a cardboard under the body and placed it on a dolly. Rooster had done a lot of research before coming to this appointment. The statue being here was entirely within his calculations. Finally, Rooster slipped out of the storage room and exited the restroom, returning to the guest room. In the guest room, Rooster used Bowen's phone right in front of Tiger's eyes to bring Morris to Bowen's office. I know what's coming up. How will you attempt to rationalize this, I wonder? I'll be honest, I also don't quite know how Rooster managed to pull it off. However, when Morris walked in, he heard a pre-recorded message that Rooster made Bowen give in a storage room into his phone's microphone. A pre-recorded message, huh? Good Fury Mouse, still unique as always. But how was this message played to Mr. Morris? Remember, no calls were made, the speakers were only connected to the computer, no files were deleted. That's, well, there's gotta be some answer, right? Some answer? I thought you were going to supply that answer, Mouse. I have an idea, actually. Go for it, Sheep. Well, I know this sounds kind of dumb, but Rooster was really prepared. He could have done something like programming his own innocuous-looking website. But then before Bowen left through the window, Rooster told him to open that website but minimize the screen. At a glance, the website would look normal. It wouldn't raise any alarms if we search web history. However, since it was programmed by Rooster, it could secretly be used to display out live messages at a whim. Or something like that. A pre-programmed website? You people are getting absurd. You're right, it's absurd. But isn't that the point? The more ludicrous the plan, the harder it would be to imagine someone doing so crazy. Sheep's exactly right. Besides, this isn't the only solution. There are other outside-the-box ways of giving Morris the "you're fired" message without a trace. She's just raising one possibility. Ah, I see. Very helpful, Sheep. Thank you. Now then, what's next? I'm sure you're aware that after this, Morris drove away, and yet a stack of cash with Bowen's fingerprints was found in his car. When do you propose that got in there? Rooster could have done that before he arrived at the building. If I recall, Morris's car was cheap. It was the kind I might have. It wouldn't be hard to break in and plant the cash then. My, oh my, even Horse is jumping in to correct me. How sad. Well, Rooster had not yet gained any opportunity to access Bowen's safe. How do you explain that? He didn't need to. He probably just took a couple of the bills in Bones' wallet and put it on the top and bottom of the stack, and voila, trick complete. Anyways, the delayed text then prompts Snake to bring the statue into Bones' office. Like Snake mentioned, it was heavier than expected because there was a full corpse inside. Ah, I remember that line. Snake left, and after the right amount of time passed, Rooster barged into Bones' office. Immediately, he locked the door behind him. He couldn't afford to let Sheep in until he was ready. He next unlocked Bones' corpse from the statue and dragged him into the center of the office. He put Morris's phone back where it belonged, in Morris's pocket. There, Rooster bludgeoned Bone with a statue on his desk, creating the crime scene. Rooster continued to drag the body to Bone's safe, which Rooster unlocked using the code. The second demand Rooster made in the storage room was the code to Bone's safe. Who knows how Rooster got that out of Bone, but he clearly did. When Rooster opened the safe, he knew he couldn't hide the amount of money that would need to be missing on his person. So he took out the plastic bag and lighter he had been keeping in his pocket, piled a whole load of money into it, opened the window, then burned it. No money was ever stolen, that was never what this was about. Rooster then picked up the statue murder weapon and placed it in the bag. Then he chucked it out the window to a nearby bush or something to later be picked up. He closed the window and locked it, then he unlocked the door to the office and simply acted casual, waiting for Sheep to catch him. And just like that, the perfect crime is committed, perfectly pinned on Morris. What a spectacular work of fiction, Mouse. In all of our sessions, I never realized that you had a talent in fiction writing. However, I'm sad to say that little work of fiction you just spun is by no means definitive proof of anything. For instance, let us say that your explanation of how the crime went down was largely accurate, however the true culprit was Sheep. What? That was exactly what I was getting at. Go on, Mouse, tell me why I was wrong. Does she not possess every opportunity that Rooster had? Well, yes. So then why are you not accusing her of the devious murder? Go on, Mouse, tell me, I want to know. Is it a lack of motive? But of course Sheep would have motive after working under such a despicable man for so long. In my opinion, Sheep is more likely to be knowledgeable enough to pull off such a crime. That's the issue, Monkey. If Sheep was the killer, there would have been many other chances for her to get away with murder. Fact of the matter is she never would have needed such an elaborate plan. Actually, the fact we were able to rule Sheep out like we did ended was a stroke of amazing luck. Sure, Rooster intended on Morris being the prime suspect, but he couldn't have counted on Snake never taking his eyes off the hallway. He couldn't even be sure Snake would be looking down the hallway. Had any one of a number of factors gone differently, we would have been torn between Sheep and Morris as the potential killers. Bunny's right. You go to such lengths to hide your involvement only to be a slightly lesser suspect. It seems implausible, no? Okay, so there's no concrete evidence that Sheep didn't do it, it's just implausible. Right. That was the expected result. All your arguments so far have been fairly standard. Good. So then, what of it? Congratulations, Mouse, you have solved an old cold case where dozens of cops could not. Very well done. Rooster actually killed Amadeus Morris. What does that have to do with me at all? It has to do with you because he was your partner in crime setting up the Zodiac race. Perhaps he was the original impetus for it all. Oh? It wasn't Brian's idea? Not initially. And why did Rooster set up such a laborious incident? I can think of a number of reasons. For one, Rooster's career had been flagging, hadn't it? He was on the cusp's edge of irrelevance. Something was needed to revitalize his career. Some major incident that would thrust him into the limelight as a hero. I think the Zodiac race certainly qualifies. There are also some people Rooster would certainly appreciate being dead. However, as already seen, Rooster is a complete paranoid perfectionist. Just to kill one man, he came up with a thoroughly elaborate plan to divert all suspicion, and even that wasn't enough. After all, there were 3 people who threatened to ruin everything for him, weren't there? First up, there was the local gang leader who directly saw him the night he stole Bone's MasterCard. Maybe in an attempt to not have eyewitnesses identify him, Rooster left the restroom through the window or something. And in doing so, Dragon got a very good look at Rooster, and he knew that. But he didn't know that Dragon was entirely wasted at the time and wouldn't remember the incident in the slightest. Wait, something like that happened? There was also the issue of Amadeus' son, who had proved to be incredibly unstable. He was investigating the case on his own, convinced of his dad's innocence. Worse, perhaps, Rooster's stalking revealed that he was bouncing theories off of Snake, yet a person who could ruin it all. After all, Snake was the one who could attest to the weight of the statue, could attest to the out-of-place cardboard under it. You must have been so confused why he never brought something like that up beforehand. You didn't know that Snake was so out of it at the time you barely noticed those details. But at this point, Snake was the only one who knew such details. So long as he was alive, he posed a threat. You're saying this was done to kill 3 people? That seems incredibly elaborate. Why would Rooster go to such lengths? Well, first off, it's worth noting that Rooster planned on being a super famous star. If that were ever to be the case, a case like Bowen's hanging in his past would be a glaring weakness. If a sliver of proof remained, his stardom could attract reporters who would dig into matters, and might find witnesses like Dragon, like Snake, like Brian. But you're right, were that it, this whole thing would be incredibly unreasonable. I'm not going to claim to know all the answers, Monkey, but I would guess he was influenced, just like Brian was influenced into starting this killing game by you. I thought you said Rooster came up with the killing... Oh, I thought you said Rooster came up with the killing game. Rooster came up with the need for one, but like I said, the reason this whole thing would work would be because you'd lure someone else to do all the dirty work for you. You were Brian's therapist, right? It was no mistake that he wound up the way he did, was it? You led him there. You didn't discourage fantasies like the Zodiac race. In fact, you were his accomplice in setting all that up, weren't you? And once he had gone so far as to prepare things like the collars, the coding for it all, you knew it was time to strike. The reason why a bunch of more deserving people weren't thrown in the death game was because you needed to leave room for 5 people. Yourself, Rooster, Snake, Dragon, and me. And you, and me. For whatever reason you had decided I was also someone that needed to be involved in all of this. For whatever reason you also decided I would be another person you'd have to clean up after. You know your logic is strong when you have to start it with for whatever reason. And surely Brian would have objected to this, no? He would have, which was why before you could hold your own personal voir dire, you actually killed Brian long before the actual Zodiac race could start, through poison perhaps. Ah, yes, with poison, you caught me. But in all seriousness, you expect anyone to believe this? In case you forgot, Rooster and I were participants. How could we be hosting a game like that? In case you forgot, the majority of the game was automated with many messages pre-recorded. Yes, I'm aware, but what about those not pre-recorded? Perhaps the trickiest part was during the big speech at the beginning with everyone crowded together. It was critical you established early that this thing was being puppeteered by someone else who was alive. So you showed a live feed of Brian's corpse with his face covered in a mask and with his butterfly tattoo meaningfully exposed. But in setting it up, you asked for us to do one key thing, one thing that was awfully unnecessary that never really came back up again. We were supposed to all sit down, face the screen and put back on our animal masks. It is my belief then that you had customly rigged it so that once you put on your animal mask, Monkey, a small microphone inside the mask, or perhaps in your collar, was put through a voice filter and played on the speakers. Okay then. That is why you set things up the way you did. But if that was the case, you surely would have heard me speaking. We might not have. No, you definitely would have. I don't think so. I wasn't sitting that far from the group. Then you were whispering, weren't you? You whispered, but the program raised your volume. I always thought the Jade Emperor's intonation was off. I wouldn't suppose you had any proof of this claim, Mouse. Oh, of course I do. Isn't it odd that you were the only one not to speak a word during the Jade Emperor's speech? Oh, God damn it. Mouse, that is not proof of anything. Apologies, but I wasn't feeling particularly chatty at the time. Fine, it doesn't prove anything other than the possibility that I'm right. Still, that's enough. Anyways, from there you made sure that between you and Rooster, at least one of you was usually away from the group. You managed to game through the custom app, each of you having a phone. More to the point, a lot of the game was run automatically. However, when you tried to set it up where you'd kill both Dragon and Snake, making it seem like they'd operated each other's tablets, you were unable to make a move. That's because Dog had Bunny gather everybody and put you both in constant surveillance. I find it funny that my co-conspirator, the one you think was equally behind all of this, is now dead. does that not act as some point in my favor? Not really, no. No, not really. After all, he wasn't behind this game. Nor was Brian or some other third party. You were. Oh, I can't claim to know why you did it, Monkey. If I had to guess, you had simply gotten a taste of hosting something like this and you did it for some sick sort of enjoyment. Whatever the case may be, you didn't inform Rooster of what you were doing beforehand, which is why he reacted so poorly. You established that this was being run by a third party early on by using the opposite trick than what you used last time. In fact, this time you were the only person to interact with the cat. Because the cat warmed up to the device strapped around your chest and threatened everyone else to be silent. Of course, she made everyone else be silent. You couldn't reveal that there was nobody on the other end of the microphone. That little interaction you had with the cat, pure theatre, recorded and rehearsed. And what next? Are you going to claim that I used my position as Mastermind to rig the game? You didn't explicitly break the rules, but like Snake you definitely played a rigged game. You grabbed the Tiger of Clubs, and Rooster took the Tiger of Spades. He didn't know that he had actually gotten it at the time there. At some point in round 2 you secretly told him to give his card to Dog. Scared of being revealed, he complied. Meanwhile, you discarded your Tiger of Clubs back onto the communal table. That's the only way the actions of the game could be explained. The deception of a pair of traitors. After all, the rest of us clearly all did what we said, or else Tiger wouldn't have had 6 points at the end of round 2. Mouse, I thought we agreed that the traitor killed Pig. But Bunny can attest for my whereabouts when Pig was killed, can't you, Bunny? I can, but... So you see, you're mistaken, Mouse. You might be accounted for when we heard a scream, but that wasn't Pig's scream. It was just some recording of a scream on a timer, right? Pig's body was in front of a computer. Being the mastermind of the game, it should have been possible to exit the program, access the internet, get a random woman screaming sound effect and set it to play in a number of minutes. I think Pig's death was a tragic accident. She could have saved us all, but while she was hacking the computer, you happened to notice what she was doing. I noticed what she was doing? Wouldn't she have locked the door before getting to work? She might have just not known the door had a thumb lock. I mean, I would have missed that. Exactly. Pig was surprisingly smart, but she was also kinda dumb in some ways too. I think she just started hacking without thinking to lock the door, perhaps without even thinking to close it. When you discovered what she was doing, you knew she needed to be stopped. So you silently approached her from behind, rolled up your sleeves and slit her throat. You covered her mouth to stop her from making a noise. Of course, you could have just stopped there, but as I've shown, you're really not the type to just leave good enough alone. Why have a clean murder when you can create a mystery? First, you made the murder weapon look like the golden knife from Dog's boot. Perhaps to disguise the murder weapon. Was it possible that the actual thing that killed her was not Dog's golden knife, but Amadeus's? I don't know. What I do know is that you then set up the scene we were just to discover. You started by taping down the windows and shutting off the light. Then you emptied the bookshelf and moved it. And then, most importantly, you leaned it against a yardstick you stuck through the crack between the door and its hinges. A yardstick? Yeah, a yardstick. Tons of classes have them. You couldn't hold it there yourself while moving from inside the room to outside, so you glued it there. That's what the residue was about. Normally the bookshelf would have been too heavy. Normally the angle wouldn't have allowed you to lean it on that yardstick. But with the books removed and the bookshelf moved, it was possible. Once you exited the classroom, you removed the yardstick from its glued position and the bookshelf fell into place. Then you went to the first floor, washed your hands of the blood and returned to the library to wait. Bunny happening upon you was a lucky coincidence. What you were really counting on was Ox's presence in a nearby room. When the scream occurred, you ran out and a small group formed around the door. Being the last to enter into the room, you were able to apply glue to it as you entered. In that darkness, you were able to shove me to the side and frame it on somebody already inside. I do have an observation, Mouse. This is a very good method of murder you've invented. However, could Bunny not have used it in my stead? He has the same opportunity as me. Nah, dude may be a douche, but he's not the killer. I was listening when Snake was talking earlier. Something about the room being locked. I'm guessing that was your doing, huh? You didn't want anyone stumbling across the scene while you were still setting up. Anything that makes any sense, at least. Now here's where it gets good. Snake says that after he came across the locked door, he went down to see Rooster and Bunny. That's when Bunny leaves and has this window of opportunity you're going off about. Don't you get it? You ain't even free until after the killer must have been in the room. Oh my dragon. Believing in Bunny and listening to Snake. How far you've come. Fuck you. Dragon explained it well. You're the one who could take advantage of this trick, monkey. And that brings us to Rooster's murder. He was probably sick of your shit, to be quite honest. He pulled you to the library to ask what the hell you had been thinking with this whole other death game and now killing Pig. You decided at this point he was more of a liability than anything else, so you struck at him with a nearby heavy book. Rooster collapsed and fell down by a desk. Meanwhile, you were looking for an appropriate weapon. You landed on a pen. Gripping the pen, you leaned down and stabbed Rooster in the neck twice. Then, before someone could find you, you left the library and went downstairs. However, the incident had gotten blood on your right hand, so you made your way to the restroom and washed it off. Ah, so that's your theory. It's a little sloppier than I would have liked, with some potential holes, but I suppose it works. Well, you've given a lot of reasons as to why I'm some big bad villain. Anything else you want to tack on? Oh, right. Just now I figured out what Dog's dying message was. His dying message? Yeah, tell me what it meant. What he did with his hands. When he covered his mouth, he was referring to hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Oh, that's a bit of a stretch, but okay. He was trying to signal monkey to me. Ah, I see. On the other hand, the one that was showing 3 fingers? That wasn't 3 fingers, that was an M. I guess. M for monkey. Very clever. Okay, so I guess he was showing them down. Yeah, I couldn't have known that, unless it specifically said that, and I overread it. Alright then. The work was a little sloppy, relying entirely too much on guesswork and simply being wrong on a number of matters. However, you also managed to reach a conclusion about 2 rounds sooner than I thought you would have. So I guess I'd give this a passing grade if I were to evaluate it. It was fun enough to watch someone break my work down like that. Then this means... Oh, have you all not gathered it by now? Mouse was largely accurate in her hypotheses. A wave of unease washed over the crowd. It was a strange blend of indignation, surprise, and fear. But for me there was an added element. It's a shame, though. Now that the chaos was starting to sink in, I planned on having some more fun with you all. Preying on your weaknesses, getting you to turn on each other. But I suppose that's no longer possible. Why? Why, monkey? I trusted you. You were always a good therapist to me. And that means I'm innocent? No, of course not. I guess I never knew you well enough. But still, at this point, don't you at least owe us an explanation? I thought you just gave us an awfully long-winded explanation. Are you sure you want to hear from me? I want to know what would drive you to do something like this. Okay then, I supposed it could be a nice exercise to run through things a little more clearly. Now, where to begin? I suppose I should start with my childhood. This will seem irrelevant, but trust me, the full story is somewhat warranted in understanding my perspective. So then, when I was a young child, I learned that my brain had a defect. Oh, so it was monkey. So we've already got okay, so we do have 2 people. One of them is us, but the other one's monkey. I didn't experience emotions in the same way as other people did. That is to say, I had difficulties experiencing emotions in the first place. I learned pretty quickly that my reactions weren't like the others, that I was viewed differently than the others. To remedy that, I got better at leaving my emotions on all the time. For a time that was perfectly suitable. I was able to blend in, more or less. However, that was just one aspect of my life. The problem came with my parents, my incredibly overbearing parents. My parents who controlled every aspect of my life. You could be generous and say they worried about my life since my brain worked so differently, but I know that no matter what, they would have acted the way they did. That's just who they were. I know now that that's simply how things were. They were like that through forces beyond their control. The end product of all this was that I lived an extremely controlled life, devoid of much freedom or autonomy at all. Luckily for me and them, I turned out to be something of a prodigy. I chalked it up to a side effect of my unique brain chemistry. When I finally went off to college, it felt like I could finally breathe fresh air. Unfortunately, that didn't last for too long. Very soon after getting there, I found myself in a relationship with a rather despicable man. Certainly from the outside he seemed a suitable partner. However, he was by most metrics what one would consider an abusive boyfriend. Incredibly controlling, our relationship was anything but healthy. However, at that time I wasn't able to see things clearly. I wasn't mature enough. And I had gotten rather good at keeping my emotions on all the time, which also colored things. We went out for a time. He eventually broke up with me. I was too emotional. Having rather thoroughly opened myself up, this blow came like a dagger. That was the first time in my life I learned what it was like to really feel upset. Needless to say, I was not in a good state. And then at that time I had a rather fateful encounter.
Hey, you alright? Because you kind of look like shit.
Right at my lowest point, I met Rooster. He wasn't exactly the most reassuring person in the world, but it's clear he tried.
Seriously? That guy seems like a total asshole. That type that needs to take a little walk down a long pier.
That's not how the saying goes.
Sayings are like species, they evolve over time. Anyways, look at it like this, you're finally free.
Me?
Yeah, you have no constraints anymore. You do whatever you want to. Follow your passions unfettered.
I suppose that's a way of looking at things.
It's the only way of looking at things. Take me, for instance. I'm going to be a famous actor one day. That's just a fact. But if I was stuck answering to boring people all the time who didn't know what they were talking about, I wouldn't reach my goal until I was like an old man or something. Don't get me wrong, there can be some kick-ass roles for old man too. But that's a lot more of a niche market. They're more often mentor figures or some shit. Am I making myself clear here?
In a way, yes. Talking with him actually helped me out quite a bit. It recalibrated me, as it were. From there I got my priorities in check. Firstly, I'd learned from this whole experience that it was far preferable to keep my emotions squarely turned off. I also decided that Rooster was right. I needed to find a direction in life. Something I actually aspired towards. I settled on studying psychology. After all, the way the brain worked had always fascinated me, since mine didn't quite work the same way as everyone else's. It didn't take long for me to get a handle on things. Once you read through all the literature on the subject, you get the gist of things pretty quickly. Humans are a lot simpler than people like to admit. You hear so often about people doing illogical things when they're emotional, but you couldn't count on people to act in the way you expected when feelings were involved. But that's a reductionist's point of view. Human behavior is actually incredibly methodical and predictable. It's just that the logic it operates on isn't as straightforward or universal as most types of logic. Each brain's logic is its own world. But most of these logics resembled each other, and you could learn the patterns without too much work. Eventually, I became a therapist. It wasn't hard. I lived a serviceable life, but it felt as though I was missing something. There was some emptiness to it all, like going through the motions. Until years later, I met Rooster. He was doing worse than when I had met him last, but perhaps that's to be expected. Before, he was a youth with dreams, after he had gone through a few flagging years. But he was far from giving up, not even close. He felt the need to reconnect, so I accommodated him. As I got to know more about him, I realized that despite initial appearances, he was worthwhile. He was a lot more clever than he first appeared to be. He carried a certain type of charisma. He was the son of a rather rich family. Most importantly, watching his acting, it was clear he actually had real talent. He might not have yet made it big, but it was a matter of time before his career picked up, especially for someone as passionate as him. And so, I thought he would be worthwhile to keep around in the long term. Dealing with someone as simplistic as him, it was remarkably easy to make him loyal. Once he truly fell in love though, and once I had convinced him he could trust me, he had a rather major confession to make to me. I had the feeling something was up with him, but I didn't know what it was until that night.
So, I don't know how to really say this. I've lived a pretty privileged life. I get that. My parents were filthy rich and they supported my passions fully. However, I ended up having to cut ties with them. It turns out they were doing some really shady shit. They were using their influence to prop up legislation being passed in our city that I just couldn't get behind. It was entirely against my morals. We got in a big fight and, well, it ended pretty poorly. In an instant, I was cut off from them. It was pretty rough. I had spent my entire life able to pretty much do what I wanted, when I wanted, and all of a sudden I was completely cut off from their control. Obviously, I got through it. Somewhat, that is. Our work's still tough. It's still uncomfortable, living at such a lower standard of living. And eventually, in another argument with them, I learned something. It wasn't actually my parents' fault. They didn't want to do what they were doing. No, it was all Amadeus Bowen's fault.
Amadeus Bowen? You mean that man that...
So you see where this is going. I looked more into it. I hired a private investigator, and it turns out that dude is a total sleazebag. I'm spotty on the details, but I think he's got a massive blackmail ring going on. I was already angry at him for being a dick to me when I was trying to get work from him, but to learn that not only was he a huge villain, but he was responsible for my fall from heaven, I couldn't forgive him. I knew what I needed to do. So, to cut a long story short, I murdered him and pinned it on somebody else entirely. You have to believe me though, I didn't intend for Aaron Morris to get executed. Yeah, I put a lot of evidence on him, but how was I supposed to know that the body would be found so quickly? That there'd be such an airtight witness at the scene? I certainly didn't think they'd give the guy the death penalty for a single murder. That doesn't even seem like something you should be allowed to do as a judge, much less something you tend to do. I don't regret killing Amadeus Bowen. He was scum that needed to be vanquished. But Aaron Morris, his soul weighs on mine. He clutches my heart. He lingers behind me. He knows what I did, and he reminds me that I can never be redeemed.
I was already well aware of this case. Namely because I had just received a client of one Brian Morris. Surely this must be fate. It didn't take much to calm Rooster down, to reassure him he did nothing wrong. When he regained a more stable composure, he talked about things in more detail. He mentioned how he got a cut from Amadeus with this weird knife that he had smuggled out, about how he still keeps that knife buried to this day. He talked about how, after stealing the MasterCard from Amadeus at a bar, some gang member went up to him and straight up complimented him for the theft. He had been caught red-handed. He talked about how Aaron's son was convinced that the killer was still out there, but he was doing a dangerous amount of digging. He talked about how the artist who moved the body must have noticed things that were odd. Somehow they didn't come out in the police report, but there was no way the artist wouldn't have noticed the oddities. He talked about sleepless nights, knowing that if he were to ever become a star, these people would be loose ends he could never take his mind off. Loose ends that could reveal his sin. It was then that I had the idea. Why not make use of my client connection? Surely it would be a trifling task to convince someone as unstable as Brian into handling the loose ends himself. Luring someone so unstable into doing such drastic actions would force the police to publicly double down on Aaron's guilt, regardless of the truth. And hey, while we're at it, we could even use this as an opportunity to boost Rooster's popularity, make him the star he always wanted to be. An event like this would certainly draw a lot of media attention. It was the perfect starting place. A plan that truly killed many birds with a single stone. It took some time, but soon he went for the idea. After all, it was just getting rid of a lunatic, an old man, and some criminal scum. For my part, I viewed the situation more as a challenge for myself than anything else.
So how's it going?
Certainly, Brian is unstable enough and ambitious enough to be used. Empowering his trauma and feeding into his delusions was really procedural. Specific implementation of the plan, on the other hand, I have fears about.
What do you mean?
The brat's really an odd duck. Instead of a typical hostage situation, he's coming up with these ideas about a trial and making it like a game, a test of people's character. I've been trying to sway him in the right direction, but there's only so much I can do on that front. Ultimately, it has to be his idea. That's the whole point of this operation. That's the only way it'll be airtight.
So, the plan's not working?
No, the plan can certainly work. It's just going to be a bit more delicate to get the outcome we want to occur cleanly. More time passed.
How's progress going?
Well, things are definitely going forwards one way or the other. I'm worried though, even if we take control of things, even with the two of us both in a building, will we be able to guide the group enough so that things work out the way we wanted? Even if we do, wouldn't it be a little obvious if we were the ones who made all the important decisions?
Well, what are you suggesting?
Why not take advantage of another client connection I found?
Turns out the daughter of Aaron Morris's defense attorney has also been seeing me.
Really? Small world.
Indeed. At any rate, I think we can use her. I've been curious for a while about hypnotherapy, and after enough pestering, I got her to agree to it. And as a matter of fact, it works quite nicely. With a set rhythm and 3 key phrases, I've got her becoming quite suggestible. I'll continue to drill this in with all our future meetings. By the time of the death game, I'm sure we'll see a perfectly trained guinea pig. We'll be able to guide her down a path that suits us, makes her moves a lot less explicit, less suspicious.
Don't you think it's a little much though? Like, is it all that necessary?
I would like to try it out. Ever since I had the idea, I couldn't stop thinking about the experiment. The idea of being able to control another human being so directly filled me with an emotion I hadn't felt before. Self-reflecting, I would wager that something about my upbringing and trauma combined with my unique brain chemistry had combined to give me a disposition where being in control of others gave me a fetishistic pleasure. That's speculation though. I'd need to analyze my own psychoses a lot more before I could say anything definitively, and that seems like a waste of time.
I mean, if you think it's a good idea, this is kind of your enterprise and all.
Brilliant. Of course such an experiment would leave another loose end, so it would probably be for the best to also settle that matter.
Huh?
Hey, no mind. From there, things went smoothly. Eventually I got a full scope of what the game would actually be. I shuffled through dozens of scenarios until I found one that would be the most reliable. Then we went forwards with the plan. I won't bore you with the details. Most could probably theorize the bulk of them anyways. The point is, we put the plan in action, and words can't describe how exhilarating it felt having control of so many lives at a push of a button. Watching everybody push themselves to the limit, playing out exactly how I planned it. Well, I guess not everything went according to plan. Dog was a pebble in my shoe, but even that, in its own way, was a type of fun I had never experienced before. I'm fully aware that this isn't a rational response to this sort of thing. Needless to say, I have developed several mental disorders which have morphed my motivations quite entirely away from those a reasonable human would have. But just because I value different things doesn't make me value them any less. If anything, I learned of a unique pleasure that most could never experience. It's sad Rooster couldn't see it that way.
What the hell, Jay? I've been looking for a good opportunity to get a word in with you. Have you been intentionally avoiding me, save whispering the odd order to me?
Perhaps.
What is all of this?
It's exactly what it looks like. A game I set up.
Why? What possible purpose could there be in this? And why'd you have to kill Pig? How is that needed in any way?
Rooster, you were the one who encouraged me so long ago to pursue my passions, were you not? Is this simply that?
Huh?
Look, let me start from the beginning. Ethan, you remember what Dog showed us the other day, no?
Huh?
He showed how that golden knife had a hidey hole. Seeing that, I figured you likely never knew about that. So I took it upon myself to find the damning knife you hid and check the hidey hole myself. And you know what I found?
What?
A flash drive. A flash drive filled to the brim with incredibly powerful blackmail material on the most influential people in the city, including the chief of police.
Seriously?
That's right. A gold mine of incalculable value sitting under your nose this whole time. The fact that you never discovered this after all this time. Well, perhaps it's to be expected. I've always had a habit of overrating your competence. At any rate, whoever has this can basically run Hightower. With this, I can do whatever I want. Oliver, the police force, those with influence, they'll all dance to my song now. You know what this means?
It means freedom.
Right.
What are you going to do with that?
Whatever I want, I suppose. To start with, it'll be standard things. Money for a bigger house, for a better life, for the finer things. Living a life of luxury, it sounds nice, right? I've always wanted to try it out. And with complete financial freedom, I'll have time to try any number of passions. If none of them work out, well, there's a lot more this little flash drive will do. How far will a famous actor go to protect his secret? How dumb a law could I get passed with my influence? With the police under my control, I could try solving some cases myself, or creating them. The world's my oyster. I'll have to be careful, of course. There are quite a few opportunities for all of this to turn on its head. But I'm a clever girl, and anticipating those bad ends seems like fun in and of itself.
You're really going to do all of that?
Maybe, if I get bored. But who knows, maybe being wealthy is all that it's made out to be, and that'll satisfy me. I'll have to see. At any rate, I'm certain this flash drive will bring me true happiness. There's only one thing that could get in the way of that, and it's the people gathered here. Snake, dragon, mouse, who knows what nonsense dog filled their heads with. Ox is a prosecutor with a surprisingly rigid sense of justice and a high work ethic. He definitely needs to go. Initially I thought Bunny was easily compromisable, however I've recently learned he's been making moves against dear Oliver. He certainly has to go. Oliver's the biggest card in my deck. Pig's a desperate journalist, eager to get any scoop of news. She came close to uncovering things before, she could easily do it again. Tiger's too dumb to be predictable. He knows what she'll do, and she has the fame and riches to be a force to contend with. Horse is a complete unknown. If he gets a whiff of the truth, he could very well come and kill me himself. And Sheep? Well, to be honest, Sheep could probably be left alone, but it'd be odd to just leave her out at this point. All of them have first-hand experience with the first death game, with Dog, with the initial trial, with a lot of things. And none of them at this point are easily controllable. You told me to deal with the loose end Dog provided. Simply put, if we're dealing with loose ends, that's what I'd call the whole lot of them.
But to kill all of them, there's one thing that still doesn't make sense to me at all. I mean, there's two things. One of them is obviously the apparently then red herring of Sheep going up that vault in the gym. But the more important thing, why did Monkey just kill Dog and none of the other three in the basement that they were at? That makes no sense to me. Because clearly she's outlining here that her plan is to kill all of them anyway. So the whole game she's playing here is just to, I don't know, have fun. But this is just opportunity for everyone to expose her further. Whereas if she had just killed those three people in the basement then and there, no one would have ever found out. That's like a guaranteed safe kill, so that doesn't make sense to me. And okay, putting aside all of that, sure, let's say you have to kill them all. Why do it like this? What's with the whole death game setup? How do you expect to get away with this? Honestly, the idea that someone inspired by Brian would hold another death game in his honor is a far more believable story than everybody being individually killed at roughly the same time. I'm sure Ollie can find a suitable patsy to pin it all on. But why actually run the death game? Last time we had to do it so that it matched with Brian's description and so the other survivors would be witnesses on our side. But if the plan's to clean up all the witnesses, you should just blow them all up now and be done with it. Where's the fun in that? Fun? There's no fun in murder. Why not? No, seriously, think about it. The survivors of the past death game are back faced with a new mysterious foe and new challenges to face. With chaotic cards and a traitor lurking, will they band together or crumble under the pressure? Doesn't that sound like a cool movie? This isn't a movie! The fact that you think there's such a difference saddens me. Besides, worst comes to worst, I just explode them all and be done with it. Really, the matter is already settled. Does it really matter if I play with my food a bit? Of course it matters. It matters because it's wrong. Wrong? Ethan. You continue to disappoint me in so many different ways. I must say our time together was impactful. However, I far overestimated how much we were alike. I believe you've long outlived your shelf life. And if I'm going to be gaining true freedom, I suppose that includes doing away with you as well, right? Hold on a minute. What are you doing with that book? That's what happened. I believe that should answer the majority of your questions with the incident. However, if you have more to say to me, please do make yourself heard. This couldn't be right. I was, basically brainwashed? There's no way, there's just no way. Right? You're fucking batshit, lady. Indeed. How on earth could someone like this exist? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. You live with yourself. I already explained how I feel emotions to a far less substantive degree than the rest of you, right? You... Save it. It's not worth wasting breath arguing with this reprehensible trash. Completely unforgivable. Oh, don't curse me so thoroughly. It's not my fault. How can you say that with a straight face? This is simply how it was always meant to be. Didn't you know, Ox? The world is fated. Your genes and history were decided without your input, and like it or not,
those two factors really make the decisions. From my birth, it was 100% certain that I would grow up to be like this. I've no real say in the matter, so if you're to curse anyone, curse God for the hand he dealt you all.
You're saying that you have no real control of your actions?
Not in a grand sense, no.
And I have to ask, how are you getting any pleasure from controlling us in these death games? By your own logic, you still aren't really in control. God is.
That's...
For the first time, it looked as though Monkey had been caught off guard.
At any rate, we are really facing an issue. You've got your hands on Amadeus' blackmail flash drive, yes? So this incident isn't ending here. With your taste for blood awakened and with the city safely in your pocket, you intend to continue playing with innocent people's lives until they are eventually caught or killed. Oh, don't judge me too quick, Snake. Like I said, I plan to start with some nice peaceful living. But you know, we'll see. They say being rich doesn't make you happy after all.
We can't let that happen.
Oh, but I'm afraid you must. It's a shame that this game is going to have such an abrupt ending, but I guess that's the risk you take when you try and get clever and act as one of the participants. Believe me, it's a mistake I won't make again. But for now, don't despair. I needn't just execute a lot of you here and now. I'll also allow any of you to join me to become one of my helpers. After all, the more of you that make it out of here alive, the easier my job will be to explain all this.
You... Horse stood up. To the side, Snake whispered something to Dragon. You think you can just do whatever you want, consequences be damned? You think I wouldn't give my life to slay a monster like you? If you think that, you truly can predict nothing. Horse rushed forwards, swinging a fist at Monkey. Monkey didn't panic, however. Instead, out her sleeve came a long metal rod. That rod intercepted Horse's swing. The sound of Horse's cry and the crackling of electricity rang through the classroom.
Oh, don't worry, Horse. Your little temper tantrum was well accounted for. But are you sure you want to kill me? Isn't there someone else who should be handling this?
Horse faltered, looking down. But then he grinned. No, I think I can do this one myself. Immediately, Horse slammed his fist down, aiming at Monkey's head. He didn't hit Monkey's head, however. He hit Monkey's steak knife, which she had pulled out from seemingly nowhere. As Horse recoiled, Monkey quickly pulled the knife out Horse's arm, moving forwards to slash him across the gut twice. Horse roared, off-kilter, and collapsed backwards onto the ground.
Even the attacks you choose to use. Entirely expected. But then again, am I surprised? You are a pawn, a piece with the fewest number of moves available to them.
Monkey then took a phone out of her pocket.
I can think of a few others who might want to start acting irrationally. If you value your lives, I'd refrain from using such violence. Don't forget who controls your life.
With a confident smile, Monkey walked out of the classroom. Many people wanted to stop her, but our attention was diverted as Sheep ran to Horse.
Hey, hold on.
She took off her sweater, using it to address Horse's wounds. She looked over him with a grim decision.
Don't worry, those wounds weren't fatal. You all take care of Monkey. I'll make sure Horse pulls through this. Ah, and Sheep moves accordingly as well.
Apparently, Monkey hadn't fully left. Rather, she was simply standing outside the classroom.
Using this injury to cowardly excuse herself from the responsibility of dealing with a threat. But then again, perhaps she couldn't handle failing to properly address someone's wounds again.
Enraged, Sheep pulled a pen from out of her pocket and wildly flung it at Monkey. Monkey caught it with a calm look on her face, then began to walk away. The group went after her, though nobody seemed to know what the game plan was. Still, we all stood in the hallway looking at her. She stood back at us, waiting patiently, holding the phone in the air. A finger circled around a button that I couldn't read from here. I could guess what it meant though. The first to step forwards was Snake.
I'm not sure if your offer is genuine, Monkey. Of course it is. Well then, I'd be happy to join you.
Snake?
Forgive me, Mouse, but it's not like I have much of a choice in the matter. Our options are limited, so I now stand with the powerful. Besides, helping her with this blackmail job could be quite interesting. Done right, there could be a beauty in these experiments. I have some editorial notes on how in the future you could That does it, Snake, you asshole!
In a rage, Dragon stepped forward. Without a second thought, she swung her metal back at one of Snake's back legs.
Ugh! I knew you were a selfish asshole, but I never saw this in you. Maybe I can't hurt Monkey, but I can sure as hell set an example to potential traitors.
Dragon stepped down on Snake's left hand, then swung the bat down at his left arm. I heard the sound of bones crack. Loud scream.
Everyone, look at this. This is what happens when you sell your soul to the devil.
In a rage, she swung hard at Snake's right side. Again, the bat heavily impacted Snake's right arm. Snake fell to all fours. In a beautiful flow, however, Dragon immediately spun around and changed her target from Snake to Monkey's left arm, the one holding the phone. In response, Monkey jabbed Dragon in the stomach with the cattle prod, sending her flying, her back landing on the floor.
Ah!
Dragon, you absolute moron. I was obviously going to betray her.
What?
My, what a comedy of errors. I'd be laughing if it weren't entirely what I thought would happen. Snake would inauthentically plot to get on my good side, intending on betrayal. Dragon would act first, think later, but her eyes would never really leave me. She'd just be looking for a time to strike at me. And to think I had you two pegged as some of the most unpredictable. Just then, Snake lunged up from his position. His right hand grabbed out for the phone. Monkey, caught off guard, tried to pull back, but the phone went sliding to the floor. Dragon, still lying on her back, grabbed her bat and smashed the phone on the floor.
Gotcha.
This is... At our school, we recently had a stage performer come in. I picked up his lesson on acting out a fight quite quickly. Snake smirked, but as he winced, it was clear that Dragon had indeed broken his left arm. Monkey's entire face, on the other hand, was entirely flushed. She immediately started twiddling her thumbs at a speed I had never seen before while closing her eyes. It looked like she was muttering something under her breath. Then a few seconds later, she regained her composure. I've amended my predictions. I'm still fine. It's simply a matter of forgoing the phone and using the computer. In an instant, I realized what she meant. She's going to try and get to the base where she's running the game. However, as Ox shouted this out, Monkey reached under her sweatshirt and with a bit of difficulty pulled out a metallic stick. I realized that this was part of the contraption strapped to all our chests. Monkey was able to undo this piece from her bomb. Wait, these were bombs strapped to her chests. As I realized what this meant, Monkey flipped the switch on the cylinder and threw it up to the ceiling. She then immediately began to run down the hall. We started to follow her, but were pushed back by the immediate explosion that occurred as the cylinder hit the ceiling. It was a pretty minor explosion, all things considered, definitely not the full force of the blast that could incinerate our chests at any moment, but it was enough to do a number on the building's structural integrity. The ceiling began to collapse when Tiger leaped in front of us and held up her arms. She began to shield us as the debris began to fall.
Hurry, get through here.
We didn't need to be told twice. Ox, Bunny and I ran forwards as Tiger stood in place, attempting to prevent the entire building from falling in on itself. I was grateful for what she did, but I didn't have time to give thanks. I was sprinting towards Monkey at full speed with Bunny and Ox by my side. If she was able to get to wherever she had kept the computer running this before you caught up to her. No, I couldn't think about that. Besides, we were gaining on her. As much as Monkey could predict, she could think herself into running quicker. Up ahead, Monkey took a hard right, turning the corner where the staircase to the second floor was. Why was she? Immediately my mind flashed back to the library. Other than the two doors to enter it, there was one door in the back with an exit sign. She must be aiming for that door to leave the building. We followed her. Bunny had taken the lead, so he was the first to begin turning the corner, which is why he was the one who caught hold of the cattle prod as Monkey leaped out to ambush him. Bunny's credit though, he didn't immediately pass out. He actually caught the prod, and then to my utter shock he gripped it so hard as to break it off. I'd heard that cops needed to pass pain tolerance tests before they got their taser, but this was something different. However, it's not like Bunny was Superman. In doing this feat, Bunny immediately and wordlessly fell back onto his back. Naturally, you'd be the quickest of the three. That's the most troublesome one handled. And without another word, Monkey resumed her sprint up the staircase. But through this ambush, Ox and I had all but caught up to her. We made our way up the double-layered staircase and prepared to run down the hallway. However, once again, as Ox began to turn left around the corner, Monkey jumped out at him, plunging her steak knife at his chest. Ox didn't have nearly the instincts that Bunny had. He took the blow squarely in the chest and stumbled down the stairs, knife still in chest. And you, the smart one, fell for the exact same trick. There really isn't any difference between a cop and a prosecutor. Again, Monkey calmly resumed running away. Ox.
I'm fine, Mouse.
She just got me in the side. More importantly, go after her.
Right.
Of course.
Why'd I even stop to check if he was fine? I was the last one left. If I couldn't pull my weight, we'd all be dead soon enough. I ran faster than I ever had before. Like I thought Monkey entered the library, and I went right in after her. There in the library, Monkey turned towards me, catching her breath. I slowed down, also catching my breath. Please, Monkey, you don't have to do this. All right, I don't. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Monkey threw a jab right at my head. I was so blindsided by this that I caught the punch squarely in the face. I stumbled back to the wall. Tiger sacrifices herself in the explosion to let Mouse, Ox, and Bunny through. Sacrificed the cattle rod to get rid of Bunny. Sacrificed the steak knife to get rid of Ox. In the end, Mouse alone will catch up to me, but she won't be able to stop me from walking out that door to the nearby computer and entering a few simple keystrokes. I already told you, Mouse, I redid the calculations. This is a solved game. And your team loses. That couldn't be the case. What to do? Appeal to her humanity would be well inside her calculations. Go for a punch might also be. Especially because we already, we wanted to punch Brian and everything. I think lie is the most out there. But we'll try. We'll try lying. Okay, you've got me. If you just spare me, I'll work with you. I can help you set these things up honest. I mean, I saw through you, so you know I'm smart, right? You are quite smart, Mouse. Smart enough to know your only chance at this juncture is to trick me. Apologies, but I know you quite well, Mouse. I'm your therapist. The chance that this is genuine is perhaps 3%. No, there had to be something. Throw a stapler at her? Sure, I wasn't done yet. I had noticed a staple on a nearby desk. In a clean motion, I leaned over, clutched the object in my fist, and then flung it at Monkey at full speed. She leisurely swayed to the side, letting it fly harmlessly out of the way. Is this really the best you can manage? You really are running out of choices, aren't you? Don't worry, you won't have to make them very soon. Something, anything. I think none of these choices help, actually. Challenge her to a game. Let's settle things fairly. Oh? You think you're so good at predicting things? Well, why don't you prove that? One final game, you versus me, winner takes all. I am excellent at predicting things, Mouse, which is why I knew you'd propose something desperate like this. I fell to my knees. Despair was filling my body. There was nothing I could do. Monkey looked at me with a look akin to pity. Oh, Mouse, don't look like that. It's not your fault. You're really a remarkable woman, truly. Given your situation, you far exceeded what most would be able to do. But the fact is, humans have their limits. Looking at me, seem to be struggling. Look at me, you seem to be struggling, panicking. Thinking that if you did or said the right thing, you could win. But that's just not how things work. There are times in life that none of the options can bring you victory. Just accept that this is one of those times. Keep cool. You know, it really is a shame to get rid of you, Mouse. I had a lot of fun controlling you. And in some weird way, it was even more fun when you acted out of line. You were a wonderful puppet, but I plan on living free, and you're just too much of a liability. Monkey began to turn away. You can't. You're not going to get away with this. There's some way to stop you. It would be nice for you if there was, right? But I already thought it through. This chessboard, I picked each piece very delicately. I crafted the spaces myself. There's nothing here that's going to defy my expectations. And if nothing defies my expectations, then I can certainly control the outcome of the game. Just face it, I am in control of everything here. You are in control of nothing. Because I have control, I'm going to choose to murder you all. And nothing unexpected is going to pop up and save you. You can only explicitly taunt fate so much until the world decides to whack you on the back of the head. In this case, that whack came in the form of Rooster. To my complete surprise, he had woken up from his stupor a bit ago. Monkey made the classic mistake of monologuing for too long. While she did that, Rooster regained his footing. He did not look okay at all, but as though he were possessed, he rushed at Monkey and slammed her into the wall. Aha! Before Monkey could cry out more, Rooster's hands wrapped around her throat. What are you
This must end. This must end. With an unparalleled rage in his eyes, Rooster choked Monkey's neck harder and harder. A number of emotions went through Monkey's eyes. Confusion, then fear, then desperation, and finally acceptance. What did I do during this? Nothing. I just stood there, watching. Finally, Monkey's eyes remained open, but they saw nothing. Rooster let go of her, letting her corpse flop to the corpse. Probably not what's meant here. The floor, I guess. The second person he had killed. The second person he had strangled. Then he turned to me. He looked me right in the eye. He gave me a look of... how to describe it? I can't think of the right emotion. But it was the equivalent of a sad shrug. An apology, a grim acceptance. What can you do? And then without much ceremony, Rooster collapsed to the ground. He was far, far from recovered. The fact that he had gotten up in the first place is a 1 in a million miracle. The type that no man can predict. The sort of thing God sends now and again just to keep us all humble. Absent-mindedly, I walked to the door Monkey was running to. I opened it. And there, finally, for the first time in a long time, freedom. I wasn't moments away from dying. I could almost cry, but not yet. I looked over and saw a picnic table nearby. This door apparently led to the school's backyard. On the picnic table were a number of things. Of particular note, there was a laptop. That was probably what was running this whole thing. But there was something that caught my eye even more. A small orange USB flash drive sitting next to the computer. This was it, wasn't it? Amadeus's legacy, the root of it all. I picked the flash drive up, held the holy grenade in my hand. Now... crush it. Actually, no, leave it for the authority. That's... no. The authorities might misuse it. Crush it. It shouldn't be in existence. Without a second thought, I clenched my hand. I had had enough of this USB and the games it had played. I felt the metal crush in my hands. And just like that, it was over. I contacted the authorities and they arrived on the scene right away. In the meantime, I just stood there in the open air, finally free. To put it mildly, I had a lot of thoughts about everything that had happened. It was reasonable to say that I'd never be the same after all of this. I definitely need a new therapist, because boy howdy was there a lot of stuff to work through in all of this. But I'd move on, because unlike Dog and Pig, I could. Unlike Amadeus and Aaron and Brian and Rooster and Monkey, my life didn't have to be defined by my incident. It would take a bit of doing to get over it all, certainly. Naturally, the media would eat this incident up and I'd be all over the news. In all likelihood, I'd never truly shed the skin of this incident. Because the fact of the matter is, you can never really truly erase the past. But I didn't need to be defined by it. I could go on and become the greatest defense lawyer the world had ever seen. I could be angered by this incident, shake my fist at injustice, and turn into a prosecutor. I could become a famous author writing about what had happened and other similar topics. I could get really into horse riding and become a professional jockey. Or I could just jump off a building one day. But whatever happened, I was free to choose it. I was in control from here. And that's what really mattered to me. Many weeks later. Hey. Nice place you have here. It isn't. Nice of you to stop by, Ox. I wasn't sure if I'd see you again. I don't know why you wouldn't. We did sort of go through a lot. Also, are you really going to still call me Ox even now? Think of it as a nickname. I think of it as a reminder of a pretty thoroughly traumatic experience. Well, you always did look on the downside. Anyways, what brings you here? There's no reason in particular. I just had some time off and wanted to see how you were holding up after the dust had really started to settle in. I'm living. Found myself a new therapist. Hopefully one that doesn't try to slowly brainwash me over time. That's the goal, isn't it? So how about you? Quitting the whole prosecution racket, eh? How bold. Indeed. I can't say I'm feeling particularly confident in my choices right about now. However, after reflecting a bit on this whole thing, I can't help but feel my time there has been misplaced. I want to make the world a better place, but I might need to think a bit harder about how exactly I plan on going about it. Well, good for you. Have you figured out what you want to do now? I'm not sure. Something befitting my skill set, certainly. Anyways, did you hear about the news regarding Rooster? Oh yeah, he finally woke up, didn't he? Indeed. Honestly, after spending so long in intensive care, I thought he was a goner.
Totally. I can't believe that botch job we cobbled together actually ended up saving him.
You can never underestimate the human spirit.
You can't. He's going to jail for probably the rest of his entire life.
The case against him at present is actually surprisingly tenuous, should he not confess. But yes, I would still wager on a long-term imprisonment for him.
That's probably for the best. Well, I can't say I don't feel at least a little bad for him.
You do?
I mean, he did end up saving us when all is said and done. And he was probably just as manipulated into being party to the whole thing as Brian was.
I suppose. Still, I wouldn't have shed a tear had he not recovered. The funeral date for Dog and Pig is still being set.
It's been a while. I think it's nice that Pig's online popularity is sort of surging post-mortem. I mean, it kind of seems like hollow consolation, but you know, it's not nothing.
I'm sure Pig would have appreciated that. As I'm sure Dog would have appreciated the media's silence on his whole part in any of this.
He probably would have. Did you hear about Tiger? She's back at it with Olympics training.
I heard about that. Apparently she wants to try and qualify for some sport in the Winter Olympics, although she's not yet sure which.
That seems about right. Still, I wonder why she wanted to do the Winter Olympics specifically.
Probably just a whim. It seems a little late in the game to start training for an entirely different sport, though.
Well, if anyone could do it, it'd probably be Tiger. I also heard some news about sheep.
Do tell?
After this whole incident, she packed up everything and moved back in with her parents in her hometown.
Seriously?
I guess they worried about her after all of this crazy stuff happened.
A reasonable reaction. Well, I hope it works out for her there.
I do too.
Though I doubt it.
Huh?
In my experience, people moving back in with their parents at that age is rarely a good sign. But we shall see. At any rate, I also heard about Bunny.
Oh yeah, so did I. Since I crushed that incriminating flash drive, it's been difficult to prove much regarding the whole police situation. Didn't he, revolutionize the police force or something?
Yes, unbeknownst to Oliver Bowen, it appears Bunny has been spending his time gathering confidants who are also sick of the current system. In a rather radical turn of events, a whole bunch of evidence has come to light which has put Bowen and many other high-ranking officials under great scrutiny. They've lost their jobs and the federal courts are considering pressing charges. In the meantime, Bunny and the others have become the acting police force in Hightower.
Huh. Good for Bunny, I guess. Strikes me as the type that would plot an uprising like that.
There's also the matter of Horse. He's apparently gone missing.
What?
Indeed, the games must have broken him. People have been unable to find him despite searching. It appears his adopted child will be going back to the orphanage if this keeps up.
Did he kill himself or something?
No, if rumors are to be believed, he's rampaging the streets at night while wearing a skull mask.
Come again?
It's all very strange. All I can tell at this point is that he's not doing too well for himself. If we're really going to do a full recap of how everybody's been doing, I suppose I'd be remiss in not mentioning Dragon.
You would be.
Apparently she's reformed her gang into a group aimed to protect and uplift the community.
No shit.
Indeed. I suppose the dance with death has made Dragon turn an altruistic heel. Naturally, such drastic reforms to the group has met with a lot of backlash. A lot of people quitting, other gangs eager to take advantage of the power vacuum and the like. But that was always to be expected. For the most part, it seems like Dragon's been keeping things together.
That's a relief. I spent a lot of time imprisoned with her. I'm glad to see she's using her charisma for good.
Indeed. Snake, on the other hand, has become a full-time artist.
Really?
Yes, after the incident, he quit his teaching job. I suppose that's understandable. I spoke with him. He says that after everything was said and done, he realized the thing he was truly passionate about in life had been his art. Put in that way, it would be simply amoral to waste time dilly-dallying about nothing much of substance, no.
That sounds like Snake, alright.
Personally, I think the conclusion he's reached is a nice one.
I do too. I sighed. It was all a lot to take in.
Say, Mouse.
Yes?
Have you been bothered at all about what Monkey was talking about back then?
You're gonna have to be a bit more specific there. That lady said a lot of crazy shit.
I'm talking about her whole spiel about how the world is predestined, and everything. I've been thinking about it ever since, and she raises a point, you know. In this very specific avenue, I mean. It's just, I don't know how to refute it.
Ox, have you heard of playing your outs? I heard about it from Snake when we were in prison with dogs. Basically, the idea is that if there's a situation where you always win or always lose, you ignore it. After all, your decisions don't matter in those scenarios. Instead, you just focus on the situations where your choices can change things. I think that's pretty applicable here.
Oh, so
Perhaps predetermination is real. Who gives a shit? If that's the case, then whatever. But if it's not, then think about how ridiculous it would be to use predetermination as a crutch. Just imagine falling to win a race and then claiming that you never could have won the race because it was predestined. It's laughable, right?
Well, when you put it like that.
I think it's important to keep in mind that everyone has their own circumstances that make people the way they are, and that sometimes things happen without much of a good reason. That's all fine and good. But beyond that, the only use I can see for thinking about that type of stuff is just making yourself depressed. I don't know if I have true free will or whatever, but I know that I'm experiencing my life. I know that the choices I make are what will make my life better or worse. And that's really all that matters to me.
It's kind of a dismissive way of thinking about it, though.
Is that so wrong?
Who's to say?
I am.
Then it isn't so wrong.
Exactly.
Standing there, my eyes wandered to the crushed USB still sitting on my desk.
Evidently, so did Ox's.
I have to ask, Mose, why'd you crush that thing? It must have had a ton of important information on it. Useful information.
I sighed. I really wasn't in the mood to be lectured. I was just sick of it. That stupid little stick was the cause of so much infighting, so much suffering. I didn't want to be smart about it. I wanted it to be over.
Well, it's certainly over now.
Yeah, you're right.
It's over.
It's finally over. I couldn't say what the future had in store for me, or for Ox, or for anybody else. I couldn't say whether or not I had made the best decisions in the past, or what I should have done. I couldn't say that this whole disaster wouldn't stick with me until the day I died. But at the very least, I could say by destroying that Pandora's box once and for all, I had killed the case once and for all. No one else would be tempted by its siren song. Now all that was left was to bury the bodies it had left. And that was good enough for me. The Black Joker. There are infinite ways in the universe to live. This is merely one. No man has a set path that he must walk, but in the end we all must make the choice of which. And there's the credits. Yep, you can pause through them if you want to know about anything, but I like credits that you can click through. Those are great. Alright, and that is the true ending of the Zodiac Trial. Jesus. It's also the interview room, which, I don't know, maybe you can interview people, I guess. But we'll leave that. Not for another time. Maybe I'll look at it myself. But actually, you know what I might do? The Let's Play of the Zodiac Trial ends here. But I might in the future go through the interview room. It's just I've been recording for like 5 hours now and my voice is dead if you can't tell. So I'm leaving that for another time. And precisely or specifically, I'm leaving this for when I know I want to play a game, but it's not coming out yet. But the current Let's Play is already finished. So I need a couple of days, maybe a week or two of something that I can fill the time with or the slots with until that game is out. That's when we're going back to the interview room. If it's something worthwhile, I don't know, maybe it's just 5 minutes of time where you ask everyone one question. Maybe it's 5 hours, probably not. I'm assuming it's like 5 minutes with each person or whatever, but, you know, not now. For now, thanks for watching the Zodiac Trial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you guys next time. Bye.